Good afternoon and welcome to the Christian Recorded Dialogue. My name is Lauren Wilson, and I am not sure what day we are in the general conference. However, we are almost done. I know tomorrow is closing, and it has been a very long week and a half or so, but we are so glad to be here with the Reverend Dr. Regina. How are you?
Just fine, just fine.
I'm excited to have this conversation. Of course, I just learned that you're very cool with my parents, but also all of the great work that you do. So for those who are tuning in, please share this link. We're going to have a good, fruitful conversation about kind of what's going on in the world right now. And we have an expert sitting here with us. So just to give you a little background about Reverend Dr. Thomas, she is the co-director of Human Rights and Community Relations at AMT, and also the former Secretary of the State of New Jersey and a political consultant. So
Thank you. Glad to be here.
but I'm glad for you to be here with us. I'll just have a few questions, and maybe we may not get to all of them because this is conversational. But due to your political background and your consulting, and this being a very important presidential race, I know it's a very basic question, but why is it so important for people of color?
I think it's important because voting determines sort of our destination. We can no longer sit around and complain and have all of this hoorah about what is not happening if in fact we don't participate in the system. And the excitement around this election with Kamala Harris being on the ballot, the vice president, the excitement around it gives you extra energy to say, hold on, I can now do it. In the words of Mrs. Obama, Black jobs might very well be the president of the United States of America. And so that children around the country can see that these are the things that we can be. No longer do we have to be behind the doors. The power of Black women, the energy of Black women in this election, the energy of faith leaders, civil rights movements hold back was on the backs of those in churches. And so I think we're regaining our truth. There was a time when we were out in, just wandering, but every now and then God allows us to see the promise.
I love that. And I know that DNC was happening simultaneously while we were here. And what I think is beautiful is that a lot of our AME leaders, including yourself, are coming from the DNC or traveling back and forth because they think that both conferences and organizations are just as important because they kind of work off of each other. I think that's great. You mentioned Black women. We know how to show up and show out.
And ever since Black women showed up to do a call for Kamala Harris for president, I want to note first, these women have been meeting every month since Kamala was, in fact, the Honorable the Vice President was on the ballot for Vice President. And so Joteka Eddy decided to do it again and again. And immediately after the Black women met, organizations started following suit from what they did and raising money to be a part of that call. In less than an hour, $1.7 million was raised. It's like, let's do it right now. We're not going to let you get this call. Follow this link right here and put this money on the call. Part of the call, the second voice that you heard on that call was our very own Bishop Bastan McKenzie. And so that is the importance of who we are. One is AMEs, but who we are as Black women, that we're at the forefront, we're at the beginning, we're making things happen and change will come as soon as well.
I love that. And speaking about Black women millennials, we are just a whole different breed right now. I think you're right, we're fired up, we're ready to go. But can you speak on the importance of millennials being involved in this, just in this space of politics, excuse me. I ask that because you hear a lot of people say, I'm not going to vote, what doesn't matter. I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. They break the system, whatever. But then you have another side of group that are advocating and fighting. You have the AOCs and you have people like that who are really on the forefront, who are fighting for our rights. And we are going to get into human rights because that's your specialty. But can you speak about like millennials and kind of our place of where we fit in all of this?
As a people, as an African American people. The foundation of the movement was on young people. Dr. King wasn't 80 years old when he started the movement. Mary Beverly, Maynard Jackson, and all of those were young people. And I think the issue with young people is all too often folk want to take our history away from us, than in books, so we don't know what we did. It is important that young people and older people, all people come together. And we need in this movement the young people who know the digital divide, know how to reach people a lot faster than myself at 66 years old know how to do. And so I think it's very important that you understand where you're trying to go, and so that you can take that journey to get there. You sitting back talking about all of your great expectations. Well, create hope yourself. Create hope by creating the movement and the journey toward the movement, irrespective of what anyone else does. And so I think it's incumbent upon those of us who are older generations to take the time with the millennials to explain to them the gains and the losses that we will have if in fact they do not participate. And so I encourage you, even if you're in college and you're on your way to college now, make sure you're registered. And if your parents got to send your voter registration, early vote, absentee ballot, or the like while you're in college, then that is incumbent upon us to do. But we must, when John Lewis walked across the Pettus Bridge, he wasn't 70 years old.
No.
He was a student at Tennessee State University, Fisk University, and all of those that walked across the bridge. And so in comes the time for the young people to move out of the process.
Let's talk about the AME Church, right? Because there's voting happening too here. There's bills, there's legislation. There's, for those who do not know or are tuning in, General Conference happens every 4 years, and this is where the business of the church is done. This has been a heavy week and a half due to human rights, right? So speaking of not being silenced and standing up for what you believe in, we are witnessing on the floor right now some young people being silent about very numerous topics, but specifically the LGBTQI conversation that has now been passed on to be talked about in the next 4 years, right? So, do you think that the AME Church is doing enough regarding human rights?
Well, I think we're trying.
Okay.
I think the leadership. I think the leadership of the church is balancing the old conservative population versus the new young. It's not about LGBTQ, us being welcoming to all. We shall not do to others what was done to us, which is why Richard Allen left to create his own. And so I think that is what we have to struggle with. And we also have to understand what is written. There's nothing in the legislation that was raised on yesterday to say you got to support LGBTQ. Mm-hmm. You got to change your discipline. It was a matter that we take the blinders off and say we are a welcoming church to any and everybody that wants to hear about who Jesus the Christ is. And I think that is the dynamics. And I think young people push us and force us to look at what we're voting on and what we're reading. But you're caught between the church of old and the new church. And I would beg to say that too many folk present today are doing church and not Jesus. Too many folk today are doing church and not Jesus. Because by bringing folk into the house, you can change minds, but you can't change them from the outside because you're unassuming. When folk walk in my prison, I ain't sitting trying to figure out who they slept with yesterday. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to buy these eggs for $5 and some change. And inflation. Yeah, gas. How we want to live. Student loans. Yes. Mortgage payments. And so I think that is sort of the thing. We must stop doing church and return ourselves to Jesus.
Ooh. Thank you for saying that. And I think everyone's been trying to say that in their own way. Yeah. People are, I think a lot of people are angry. This is affecting some people directly, and not just this bill particularly. This is everything that's happening right now. It's a lot, and wow. Okay, I'm gonna sit with that.
Yeah.
But that means a lot to me that you said that. Lastly, we can go back a little, because you and I talked about this off camera, about one of your major focuses is about the bans on history and the resource outlets that provide that information. Do you have an update on kind of like what's happening with that? Because you're seeing more and more on news now, more states banning Black history and the things that matter that people should know about. What's going on with that?
AFT has been part of a movement for quite some time. We didn't start just the last few months, but we've given away approximately 3 million plus books. And we go into communities and give books away that look like the community, which we give authors of like, or the characters of like Hispanic or Asian Americans. And I think that's part of, my grandfather used to always say, if they're trying to keep it from you, then you need to know what it is. Because how important is it if they're trying to keep it? They don't care about it. They don't have no reason to know that you're in it. And so I think it's important. I think what we must do, particularly in the AME church, is Sunday school started that the African communities, that was the way that we taught reading. And so we should go back to that. Teach reading, take some of these books in our Sunday school classes, teach our children to read, teach them how to do cursive, and all as part of our Sunday school process. And I think then we would understand from whence we came, so we'll know where we're going. We are confused sort of about the whole trip of moving into the promised land, not just sitting thinking all the riches and goodness is right here, but we have to put something in it to get something out of it. And I think by persons banning books, there's a book called by Native American children's book, 8 or 9 pages. And it's about an Indian, Native American girl talking about her grandmother teaching her how to bake bread. And there's something in the book, a sentence that says that the pilgrims, they came to take away our land or our bread, and they ain't banned the book. Ain't that many words in the book. It's not that many words in the book. It's how can you take books like the bluest eye? How can you take it just does not make sense. Rosa Parks, the life of Rosa Parks, the newest book, that's crazy. She told the truth. It was her truth from when she came. And so I think what we have to do in the human rights community is we must be considerate. My truth has nothing to do with you. It's my truth. And so your fear of me telling my truth and your insecurity should not impact me. But what we must do to go beyond the banned book situation is making sure that our children have those books.
Absolutely.
Making sure that our children are reading basic books on a regular basis. And again, we have a perfect tool through our Sunday school, our YPD, to make sure that every child that comes within our congregation leaves with more knowledge than they can.
And making sure that children are surrounded by Black history.
That
is one of the most important things I think. I'm an educator myself, and even in these establishments, you have all admin and teachers who are not Black, but they're teaching students of color. We need more of us in those spaces. So I thank you for this. This was so good. I'm gonna go back to the too many people are doing church and not. That's exactly. We want to title that this, because that's some good stuff right there. Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Thomas. I appreciate it. For those who are watching, thank you for tuning in. Please share with your colleagues in the Connectional Church. We have more interviews coming up, especially now that elections are over. So stay tuned. And thank you so much for this time with you.